Good afternoon, everybody. I am very excited to learn together today. We are talking about Shavuot, and let's start by this. I know when I was growing up, there were key holidays that we celebrated year-round. There was Shabbat. Every year we celebrated Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Passover. Though Shavuot did not get a lot of love. I think for a lot of Jews, this is one holiday that maybe is celebrated less, and I don't think it's all our fault. Even in the Torah itself, there is some confusion about this holiday. And here's what I mean. There's different names for the holiday in and of itself. Every book of the Torah, it seems, has a different name for Shavuot. And so what we're today is look at all of those different names and ask, what's the significance of the names? Why is it in the book of Exodus versus the book of Leviticus? And what can we learn from that about the holiday? And I'm also going to share with you one more teaching, if we have time, from one of my favorite Hasidic rabbis, Levi Yitzhak Miberdichev, about this holiday and the significance of the day. So let's get started. You're welcome, if you'd like, to follow along in a Tanakh. I'll be using this JPS Tanakh. And why not? I'll announce some pages. If you have one at home, you're welcome to follow along. And if you don't have one, you're not going to be missing out. It's totally fine. Let's look at the first time Shavuot's mentioned. Book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 16. And I'll read it here. It says, I'll start on verse 14. It says, 3 times a year you shall hold a festival for me. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Abib. For in it you went forth from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. The feast of the harvest, of the first fruits of your work, of what you sow in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of the work from your field, 3 times a year you shall appear before Adonai your God. So in the Hebrew, it's Chag HaKatzir, the feast of harvest. So let's hold that. In this, Shavuot is not called Shavuot. It's called Chag HaKatzir, the holiday of the harvest. It's the ingathering of food from the field. Okay, that's the book of Exodus. Chag HaKatzir. Now we're going to go to the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. It is chapter 28, verse 26. And by the way, on page 163 in your JPS, and let's go to Numbers 28:26. Numbers 28:26. This is page 52. Notice here, it's not going to be called Shavuot. Let's see what the book of Numbers calls this holiday. It says, on the day of the first fruits, your feast of weeks, when you bring an offering of new grain to the Lord, you shall observe a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. You shall bring a pleasing odor to the Lord. There you have it. So here it's called Yom HaBikurim. That's how the verse starts. On the day of the first fruits, Yom HaBikurim. So we have two things so far. Shmot, in the book of Exodus, it's called Chag HaKatzir, the harvest. In the book of Numbers, it's called Yom HaBikurim, the day of the first fruits. And one more, just so we can round it out. Where does Shavuot actually get its name? The name we call it today is from Deuteronomy. Turn to chapter 16 in the book of Deuteronomy, verse 9. Verse 9. If you have a JPS, I'm on page 410. And here's what the book of Deuteronomy has to say about Shavuot. It says, you shall count off 7 weeks. Start to count the 7 weeks when the sickle is first put to the standing grain. Then you shall observe the feast of weeks for the Lord your God. There you go. Chag Shavuot, the very first time, the Feast of Weeks. Getting its name from the fact it is the holiday that we celebrate after we count 7 weeks from the first day of Passover. So there you have it. That's where the name Shavuot comes from, is the book of Deuteronomy. But throughout the Torah, it's kind of unclear why there's no consensus for this name. Is it an accident? How can we... Short answer, no. Definitely not an accident. And I think there's something to learn here from the fact that there are different... In the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers, the audience to whom Moses is speaking is very different. In the book of Exodus, the Israelites who Moses is addressing are those who came out of Egypt. They're the ones who experienced slavery. They're the ones who complain so much that they're actually not allowed to enter the land of Israel. They're the ones who have to walk around the wilderness for 40 years and die before they can enter the land of Israel. They're stiff-necked, Moses calls them, stubborn. They talk and complain constantly against God, against Moses, and have trouble seeing all of the wonderful things in front of them. The audience who Moses is talking to in the book of Exodus. Now, in the book of Numbers, and at the end in chapter 28, where Moses' holiday of Shavuot, here he uses a different name, and he's talking to a different generation of Jews. This now is the children of those who came out of Egypt. The groups are very different. The children are allowed to enter the land of Israel, while their parents are not. And I think the name of the holiday itself gives some indication as to the major attitude between the children and the parents. That generation that came out of Egypt is quite selfish. And if you want them to keep a holiday, you need to make it about them. And so, in the book of Exodus, Moses calls it Chag HaKatzir, the ingathering, focusing on the harvest that they get to keep. This is our harvest holiday. You're going to, have so much land of Israel. You're going to be overflowing, and we'll celebrate the harvest in the land of Israel. And you'll get so much stuff. That's Chag HaKatzir, the holiday of gathering and harvesting. Now, of those who came out of Egypt are of a different mindset. They don't need to be convinced of all of the things they're going to get in order to see the thing. In fact, they're the ones who are, traveling around the wilderness and growing up. Mishkan, and the Mishkan, don't forget, is a central place of worship for God, of sacrifice, that was made from all of the Israelite tribes. In the beginning of the creation of the Mishkan, people are asked to bring gold and skins and brass and all kinds of, luxury materials from which the Mishkan is made. You can imagine for a group of selfish Israelites that they may not want to bring all of those things. And so even if they might do it from a place, of maybe guilt. Their kids, however, saw them bring all these things. Their kids grew up with the beauty and the comfort of the Mishkan being in the center of their camp, and they know that it is more meaningful. We actually get more when we give than when we take. In the book of Numbers, talking to this generation, Moses calls it Yom HaBikurim, the day of the first fruits, focusing not on what they keep, what they bring to the Mishkan and to the temple. On Shavuot, that's the special bring to the temple. It's the first fruits of your field. So before you can partake of any of the harvest you've eaten, you have to take the best of what you've harvested and bring it to the temple. Moses focuses on that because that's, the real essence of the holiday. It's not what you get to keep, but what you give. And he knows that this generation of Israelites, and that they understand that these holidays and anything that they get to take with them is dependent on how much they give. And so that's why it's called Yom HaBikurim in the book of Numbers. Generation, different mindset, talking about the beauty of giving. Now, on Shavuot, transitioning to us now. We don't bring agricultural, tithes to the temple anymore. We're not landowners in Israel, nor is there a temple to do. But we do celebrate the receiving the Torah on Shavuot. And in a similar way, we could look at the gift of Torah as if this is our harvest. And on Shavuot, we can think about the difference between Chag HaKatzir and Yom HaBikurim, the holiday of the harvest and the day of giving those first fruits. In terms on Shavuot night, you'll notice that around the world, there's going to be all-night Torah learning, and that's traditional for Shavuot because this is a holiday where we express our gratitude and love for having received the Torah from God, countless generations, and we celebrate that by studying. But why are we studying, and what is the meaning of it, and what's the Torah we take with us? I want to read you an excerpt from Shachrit, from the morning prayer service. This is where we say the Shema. Right before we study our passage of the Shema in the morning, this is from the Ahava Rabbah prayer. It says in the middle, I'll read it in Hebrew first, V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levavenu la'ahava u'yirat shemecha, v'lo navo shalom v'edki, v'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hanar b'tachnu nagila, v'nisbecha b'shuatecha. Great, that was beautiful, but not the line I wanted. The line I wanted was actually before that. Regarding Torah study, it says, B'ten beli beinu lahavin ulhaskil lishmoa lilmod ulelamed lishmor v'lachayim ekol divrei Talmud tortecha b'yahava. It's plant in our hearts the ability to understand, to hear, to learn, to teach, to guard, and to uphold the word. Now, let's look at the order of those. First, it's to learn Torah. Well, actually, first it's to learn Torah. Then it's to teach, lilmod ulelamed, to learn and to teach, to guard, and then la'asot ulkayim, and then to do them, to live them out. Torah study 2 has different levels of effectiveness, you can call it. Almost kind of the merits of Torah study. On a base level, learning Torah for the sake of just that harvest. This is mine. I'm gonna keep it. It's I'm learning it just to learn it. Um, Learning it just to have it as mine. That is called that's the base level is Leomod, just to learn it. And I don't want to confuse that with learning it for the sake of learning it, which is a Torah. It's called Torah Lishma, like learn sake, because I think Torah Lishma actually includes kind of the deeper level of Torah learning that we're going to get to in a second. So the base level is learning, and then the next highest level is lilamed, to teach it, learning Torah in order to teach it to others, to expand Torah. Learning, you're not just keeping it for yourself. You're learning it to share with others. We're taking that step from the harvest holiday, first fruits, from what is mine to what I can bring to others. And when we teach Torah, then we actually, we connect more to the essence of what we're teaching. That's the next level. And then we have Lilmod ul Lilamed Lishmor. Then there is the idea of guarding and doing, La'asot ul Kayem. This is, I think, what we mean by Torah Lishma, learning Torah for its own sake. It's learning Torah in order to, infuse Torah into who you are, and then to live that out into the world. It's a deeper kind of giving. With learning, you can learn all about the laws of Shabbat in order to teach them. With teaching, you can learn about the laws of Shabbat in order to teach them and still yourself not actually keep Shabbat. There you are giving something, but it's a little less than if you were to actually live it out. Then not only are you giving it, by teaching by example, but it becomes a more lasting gift to anybody who receives it from you. You have, for instance, your children or your students or your friends will see you keeping Shabbat, and in doing so, you do more to teach them about Shabbat than just teaching them the words on the page about things you can and can't do. That is a giving. And so Torah too, we see you have Chag HaKatzir and Yom HaBikurim, and the goal is to get to that place of get to that mindset that the more you give, the more you get. When we learn Torah, we can't. We can, but we shouldn't do it in the way that the first generation of Israelites viewed this holiday as just taking what's mine. Instead, move to the idea that the most important thing is what we give. And in Torah, what that means is living it out. Learning Torah in order to bring it out into the world through your actions. I want to share yet another name by which this holiday is called. And in the Talmud, it's called... that's also confusing, right? Now there's 4 names. By the way, there's also more names for this holiday. But in the Talmud, it is consistently called Atzeret. And that's because Atzeret comes from the root Ayin Sadi, which means to stop something. Shavuot is the Atzeret, it's the stop, it's the end from the holiday of Passover. It's connected to Passover. That's why it's called Atzeret. It's the end of kind of the first part of the festival season that started with Passover, with Shavuot, and it's connected by way of the Omer. Every day we count one day leading up to Shavuot. Today's day 42, by the way. And so in that sense, it's connected every single day through a consistent counting we do it on the second day of Passover, all the way 49 days, 7 weeks, and on the 50th day we have Shavuot, called in the Talmud Atzeret. By the way, why the holiday, the 8th day after Sukkot, is called Shmini Atzeret. We have a week of Sukkot celebrations, and then Shmini Atzeret is the 8th day festival, which is ending. It is Atzeret. It is the end of the festival of Sukkot. So the Kedushat Levi has a beautiful teaching about Atzeret, and I want to share it now. Just to kind of end our conversation about what it means to give Torah. I'll read it to you here. He says, it was asked of me in Lithuania, why do we call the Chag HaShavuot by the name Atzeret? He says, one reason is because it comes from Ramban, who explained this pasuk from Shir HaShirim, and the pasuk is this. It says, do not awaken love, nor stir it up, until it is desired. Ad shetichafetz. The Ramban explained, when there arises an kind of awe and love of God, immediately that person wants to make a vessel for it. That is to say, immediately that person wants to do some kind of mitzvah, give tzedakah, sit and learn some Torah or something like that. For it's known that this realization of awe and love comes to a person suddenly, and its source is an outpouring of God's light. When that happens, immediately if a person wants to dress it up in some kind of body so that it has a substance, something solid, so that it's not lost. This is the essence of the verse, says the Kedushat Levi. Do not awaken love, nor stir it up until it's desired, because the word chafetz, which means desire in the verse, also has a second meaning of a vessel, a kli. For when somebody has that realization of awe and love for God, immediately that person wants to put it in some kind of vessel. The Kedusha Levi continues. He says, at the time of giving the Torah, when God gave the Torah to the Israelites on Mount Sinai, there existed for the Israelites a kind of soul-deep inspiration. They did not have even one mitzvah to make a vessel for it. I love this. He says, when God gave Israel the Torah, they had such deep love and awe for God, but they had no way to express it because they didn't have a mitzvah they could do with all of their heart in order to show God that they loved Him. So he says, we must say that when the Israelites were given the commandment from Moses to make a border around the mountain and not to cross it, or to touch the mountain, they were in effect prevented, from the word atzeret. They were prevented from touching the mountain. And it was with this commandment that they made a vessel to hold their soul-deep inspiration, and on account of this, Shavuot is called atzeret. So I'm going to sum that up for you. It's a beautiful teaching, and this is what it means. The name Atzeret for this holiday comes from the very first mitzvah that the Israelites had in relation to God in the Torah, which is when God gave them the 10 Commandments, God said nobody is allowed to walk up the mountain or touch the mountain, this is Mount Sinai, until you hear the sound of the shofar. And so it was through that one mitzvah that the Israelites were able to express their love for God. Finally, they had one mitzvah that they could do with all of their heart to show God that they loved and honored and were in awe of everything that is God. It's with our mitzvot that we live out our deepest Jewish values. It's with our mitzvot that we express through them our love for God, our awe of the universe, and the hugeness, that is beyond comprehension. And when we learn Torah and we practice Judaism with the intent of giving love, of passing this tradition on from generation to generation, not because we have to, but because we genuinely love this tradition, then we get so much more in return. So with that, I will sign off for now. And next week, we have some more great Shavuot learning. Tuesday night, we'll learn together about why we eat dairy on Shavuot. And then you can join me for our Tikkun Leil Shavuot. We're going to be studying in a Zoom class together on the Torah of clothing. This is going to be Thursday night on Shavuot at 9:30 p.m. We're going to look through the arc of stories in the entire Torah, all about clothes, and talk about the significance of them and what they represent according to them. I look forward to learning with you then, and see you then. Bye.